So for the last few months, we've been focusing all of our special monthly EDUs for all of you in the $5 month tier and higher on the holidays, right? We had Soen, Maven, Yule, Hogmanay, and even last month I covered Lupercalia, which is today. Happy Valentine's Day or happy anti-Valentine's Day, depending on what's going on in your life. But I thought we would take a step back into our spiritual arts program. And so a lot of times in the past, before we went into the holiday season, we talked about how we can implement protection, prosperity into our home, standard everyday houseware, homeware. And so I thought what we would do this month is talk about making alcohol ink tiles. Now, I know a lot of you have seen the alcohol ink sacred fire casts on glass, and that is a beautiful way to have something in the home that is helping you achieve your goal, helping you manifest your intent. But I think tiles are a wonderful way to do that as well because you can use that in flooring, you can use that in kitchens, bathrooms. I mean, you can use tiles everywhere, and they're actually pretty easy to make and set intents with. So I'm going to go through a PowerPoint with you, and then I'm going to show you just a real quicksy kind of demo on how you can create your own tile for use in your home for prosperity, for protection, or whatever it is that you feel you need in that environment. So let's pull up the PowerPoint. If I can find it. There we go. All right, so ceramic tiles for spell crafting your places and your spaces. These work well, like not just in your home, but like even at work or other environments you spend a lot of your time in. So ceramic tiles, first of all, are pretty versatile items. They're very affordable. They tend to be slip resistant. They're durable. They're fired, clay products. And they're really popular, obviously, in homes for walls, backsplashes, like traffic floors. They're porous, more porous than porcelain, so they work with ink very, very well. They're lighter in weight. They're moisture resistant. So just kind of like the basics of why you might want to use a tile to create a prosperity device or a protection device for your home. So you can use these in your kitchen, bathroom, laundry room, entryways, even patios and walkways outside if you're in a milder climate. I wouldn't necessarily, like where I live, I don't think I would put it outside. The winter would probably destroy them. But I am going to be showing you how to work with an unglazed tile. Unglazed tiles, they're very natural. They have that matte finish. They're rustic looking. Now you can work with glazed tiles. I will tell you, using alcohol inks is much easier with glazed tiles, but I like making things difficult for myself. But they are dense. They're thick. The surface is non-reflective. With glazed tiles, there is a little bit of reflection there. But with unglazed tiles, you have more of that traction, right? Superior traction. So if you're putting a prosperity or protection sigil into a tile design and it's going to have a lot of traffic, I would go unglazed. People also make these, they use them as pizza stones, right? In their ovens because they hold heat. Tiles will hold heat, especially these. You'll see a lot of artists using the mosaic art, different types of paintings if you go to art shows, even coasters, right? So the one thing I will tell you, it is important to seal them. A sealant and, even at times you could use a wax coating are a good idea to protect them just from, traffic, the elements being stained over time. Especially, if you are in an area that gets snow, lots of rain, lots of dirt. If you are going to be grouting the tile, I would seal the tile before grouting just to prevent that grout from sticking to any porous surface. Cleaning, very easy, pH neutral cleaners, soft cloths, mops. I would not use like harsh acidic cleaners like vinegar. That's going to probably etch the tile up. I would also avoid like abrasive cleaners like magic erasers on any kind of finished tile once you've created your piece. That can damage the paint. So build, that's going to happen, especially if you're using it in flooring. I like seeing these in entryways when people are entering the home, if you have protection tiles, because it's kind of like creating a barrier, a boundary. But, spills are going to happen no matter where you place these and just, promptly kind of clean those up to prevent staining. Delamination, delamination is when you set tile, especially in flooring. If there's not proper installation, there'll be like a hollow sound when somebody walks on it. Eventually, it's going to like break or fail. So just ensure proper installation. Have somebody help you with that. If you don't know, I don't know how to do it. I would have to have somebody help me with that. But if you're using them for simple crafting, like for your altar, like you're making coasters or altar tiles, you can use acrylic paints. I'm going to show you how to work with alcohol inks today because those are my favorites. Just seal it with a spray-on sealer when you're done. Now, I would not expose your newly finished tile to water for at least 3 days just to make sure that you have that maximum durability there. So that's just my advice. Some people say go ahead right away, it's fine, but I wait the 3 days. Here's a cute one I really like. The Evil Eye, right? Beautiful tile. All right, so painting with alcohol ink specifically on ceramic tiles does involve applying these very vibrant, kind of fast drying, transparent inks onto, glossier matte tiles. Again, we're doing the more matte tiles today. I'm going to show you how to work with that. But you do use rubbing alcohol. You're using rubbing alcohol to blend and create these very fluid, abstract designs. Now, some people will use a UV resistant spray to prevent fading and flaking. I don't. You can use brushes for these, paint brushes, felt pads. You can use air tools to kind of manipulate the ink, especially if it's glazed. I just stick to cotton balls, Q-tips, very basic stuff, and I'll show you that today in the demo. You don't need anything fancy here. Now, if you are using like glossy white tiles, I go with 4x4 or 6x6 inches. I think those are small enough to, place pretty much anywhere, use whatever, for whatever purposes, but big enough to really do some really nice sigil work or some, symbolism or design work, depending on what your intent is. I'm going to show you a prosperity intent today for money acquisition, money retention, money drawing. Of course, that's important nowadays, right? So your blending solution is going to be that rubbing alcohol. So it's going to be 91% or higher isopropyl alcohol, your basic rubbing alcohol. Again, for your applicators, I'm using cotton balls, cotton swabs and tips, some paint brushes. You can use felt pads, whatever you're comfortable with. Whatever you have on hand, don't go spend a lot of money, right? You can get this stuff very cheaply on Amazon. For sealer, I put a couple of recommended sealers here if you're going to use that, but there's a lot of very affordable. I mean, you don't have to use UV resistant. I don't, but if you're like a perfectionist and you want it to be perfect, do the UV resistant sealer. To prep it, you're gonna, clean it with alcohol to remove dust and oil. I'll show you that very simply. You are going to do a base layer. So that base layer is applying rubbing alcohol to the tile to help the ink spread. Now, again, with unglazed tile, which I'm going to be demoing today, it is not going to spread as easily as with glazed. So you're going to have to go over it a few times. You're going to actually be reapplying alcohol to your Q-tips, your cotton balls as you're working with the tile. If you go the glazed route, you got to be really careful because the ink is going to move all over the place. And I'll kind of show you an example of that from a class I did last month. But adding color, you can drop the ink right onto the tile, allow the colors to mix. You can use straws to blow and manipulate the colors. Again, with unglazed tile, it's harder to do that. So I'll show you how I move the ink around. I use alcohol and cotton swabs, cotton balls. Texturing, applying rubbing alcohol drops to create bubbly textures. That's one thing that you can incorporate as well. I'll actually take a Q-tip and I will dip it in alcohol and just create my own little bubbles. But whatever works for you. Again, finishing once it's fully dry with alcohol ink, about 30 to 60 minutes. They say faster than that, but I always give 30 to 60 minutes. You can apply, thin coats of sealer after that time if you want. Sealing is mandatory. I'm throwing it in here. Alcohol ink will rub off or fade over time, especially if it's put outside, it will fade in the sun. If it is going to be walked on, it is going to probably fade a lot faster. If you're using it as, a wall backsplash in the kitchen, bathroom, laundry room, probably not. Depends on how much moisture and water is coming into contact with it. So, seal it if you want to. avoiding over mixing, mixing too many colors. I love colors, but with alcohol inks especially, that is going to result kind of like in a muddy black brown, and you're not going to want that. You're going to want to stick to like 2 to 3 complementary colors, maybe add in some like glitter elements. Like they have some great alcohol inks like gold and silver glitter that you can add to your primary colors to kind of give it some texture as well. And I like to, add multiple, like if I'm using green, I'll use 2 or 3 greens and I'll kind of mix them together or I'll layer them. But I won't go overboard, right? If I, and I'll kind of show you an example of that from my class last month. I have those tiles here. Um, Protective gear. Look, I was playing around already and got splashes all over my white shirt because I wasn't thinking. I'm kind of tired today. Yeah, wear an apron. Alcohol ink is hard to get off of anything and everything, especially your skin. I just scrub my hands for about a half hour to get them dirty again for you guys. But also work in a well-ventilated area. You are working with alcohol. Alcohol ink fumes can be strong. You're working with a bowl of alcohol, so have some ventilation, right? Um, okay, so here's some more. I love these tiles. I found those online when I was doing a search just to show you guys. But other things, these are considered enchanted items, right? Tiles can be decorated with very specific magical art or designs, which is what I'm going to show you today. They can be used in spells as very durable, customizable, and elementally charged tools because these sorts of tiles represent a combination of the elements, right? Earth, water, fire from the kilns, right? And air. So it makes them really ideal for being inscribed wards, for sigil work, for altar tiles. Obviously, they can be painted. They can be used as protective barriers in homes. Like I was saying, I like using these in entryways as a protective boundary. So with sigils, you can draw or paint those on for protection, prosperity, binding. And you can put those in very specific, areas of your home, by the door, by a garden. Elements, again, because the fired clay involves all 4 elements, earth, water, and clay, fire, air, and kiln, they are potent for foundational work, elemental work. I think you can, even if you don't like doing designs, you can just do solid colors or combination of colors, using colored tiles to represent elements, like a blue tile for water workings, red for fire. And that can kind of be used to define a space on an altar too. Breakage, with tiles. We've talked about this in a previous spiritual arts class, I think last year, when we create art, especially if it has a protective setting. What happens? What does it mean when it breaks or something happens to it? So usually is an omen that a charged tile that breaks unexpectedly, it's kind of like an omen of maybe, I use the word danger, but there's something there that probably shouldn't be, because it's protecting the home by absorbing that negative energy. Madison, for the longest time, kept buying, these evil eye bracelets and they kept breaking over and over again. And she's like, man, I'm like, I know, that's crazy. It was warding her, but that's their purpose. If they ward something, they generally do break and they're going to have to replace it. So anyway, so you're going to want to make a new one, seal it. You want that spell to be permanent. You're going to replace it if the tile breaks. Natural materials, you can incorporate other materials like quartz into clay. You can use local soils for very specific personalized spell work like graveyard dirt. So if you have a kiln, I used to have a kiln years ago. I actually sold it before I bought the house in Racine. But if you are a claysmith, if you are a kilnsmith, you can go and collect bank dirt, graveyard dirt. There's so many, things that you can incorporate if you're going to be making the tiles yourself. I know a lot of you are probably just going to buy them on Amazon, and that's fine too. But if you are more crafty, there's a lot of things you can do with these. I actually had a client who made bank dirt tiles, because she was trying to get into a new business, and it actually worked out well for her. Anyways, so ceramic tiles are widely used in witchcraft, and other crafts, whatever name you want to give it. You will primarily see them used as altar tiles called patens, just due to their association with the earth element. So for grounding, for creation. Other aspects of altar tiles, they can serve as that focal point to draw energy onto an altar or like into any really ritual space that you're using. But you're going to see them decorated with very potent symbols, like pentagrams, like the triple moon goddess, Celtic designs. And they are durable, they are easy to clean, they can hold offerings really well, crystals, herbs, candles, other ritual tools. They look nice. So they have all these purposes, right? Which is why I thought it'd be neat to kind of, go over making some of these. And here's some really cute kind of abstract ones. I have a friend here, she makes tiles just like these in the upper picture. And underneath those color blocks are tiny little fine line sigils made with a Sharpie. And I'll show you how to do that too today. But let me just move myself out of the way here. The symbolism, the connection to earth, ceramics again are made from clay. It has that strong spiritual association with the earth, femininity, and the creative process in many cultures, many belief systems. So working with them is going to enhance spells related to grounding, nurturing, abundance, and inner strength, even if you're not setting an intent for them. If you don't know what intent you want to set for them, but you want to try your hand at making some, they're going to work well just as they are for those purposes. In spell work and rituals, plain or decorated ceramic tiles are going to be used for a base for specific spells like crystal grids. I actually have a friend who has a bunch of little tiny tiles for little tiny crystal grids, which I think are very adorable. But it is a flat, stable surface, right? So it provides kind of a dedicated, energetically clear space for arranging any kind of, magical components or performing even divinations. So there's a couple of different divinations I think you can actually do specifically with tiles alone. I'm not going to get into that today, but maybe that's what we'll do next month. We'll do some unique divination techniques in our monthly special EDU. Anyway, you can use items like runes, letters, Scrabble. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Scrabble divination. I did that for a while. I love it. But decorative magical items, they are. Ceramic tiles feature kind of like that witchy art. Symbols that are popular for integrating magic into our everyday home, our home life. And again, you can use them as coasters, wall art, trivets. They're very discreet. You can infuse a space with very protective or specific energies, and nobody would be the wiser. Scrying. So some practitioners do use specifically designed ceramic tiles for scrying. It's kind of like a form of divination that involves gazing to a surface for a long period of time. Many practitioners create ceramic tiles to imbue them with their own personal energy and intent. And they usually, again, there are those out there that start that process from shaping the clay to firing it, glazing it. The whole process A to Z is like a very spiritual experience in itself. And so the resulting tile from that, it's customized with colors, using color magic, symbols, herbs mixed into the clay. We were talking about dirts, but herbs also, to align with that practitioner's unique path and intentions. So many possibilities here. So let's try one together. So let me stop sharing here, and I am going to switch cams. We are going to go over to my craft table cam. All right, so let me scooch over. All right, so we were talking about the difference between matte or unglazed, which is what these two are right here that I was playing with, and you can see they're still not completely dry. I'm going to move them out of the way. But here's a good example of glazed. As you can see, it has like a reflective surface. It's much easier to work with, but you have to be very careful because, alcohol inks are going to be all over the place on this thing. So you got to be careful. So this was a little kind of like I want to say like a new beginnings type tile I made a couple of weeks ago. Here's another example. Again, these are glazed. If you're going to use glazed, you're going to have that kind of, I haven't even sealed these yet. This is just the natural kind of glaze finish that you're going to get working with these kind of tiles. So I'm going to do an example for you using unglazed. These are some unglazed ones I was playing with earlier. This one, you may not be able to see it because I hit it pretty well, is a prosperity money drawing right inside of a cardinal. And this is another prosperity money drawing that is kind of just in a glitter haze here. But let's make one together just so I can show you how to do it. Either side on unglazed is going to feel the same. So with glazed, obviously, there's only one side that you're going to feel has that glaze. Here, you can work with either side. So I start with some cotton balls, a little bowl of alcohol. I'm going to get these saturated, and we're going to get this nice and wet. And again, this is just going to be like a quickie demo so you guys kind of see. So now I have these wet cotton balls. So I'm going to use a glitter. Now, if you're using alcohol inks, the glitter ones, you've really, really got to shake like crazy. So for my background, I use glitter and magenta. I think those are good colors for money drawing. So you're just going to take your cotton balls that are already wet. You're going to very carefully kind of dot some of that first color on there. And then maybe your glitter next. You're just going to dot, dot, dot. Sometimes I like to go back and put a little bit more color so it's just not all glitter. And you can mix colors. You can use 2 or 3 colors here, but I'm going to keep it very simple for you. Now, I like to kind of dab this off to the side on some paper towel because the first couple of dabs, as you can see, are going to be very, very thick. And then I'm just going to go ahead and do my background here just by dabbing. You know, this is more of a pinkish silver, so maybe we'll do a love sigil for Valentine's Day, huh? So you can kind of see, hopefully, I know there's a little bit of a glare. It's very glittery. I love that with alcohol inks. You get this really nice glitter. Okay, we're gonna set that to the side. So let's start doing a design, right? Let's do a sigil for love drawing. I'm gonna take one of my Q-tips. I'm gonna dip it in alcohol here. And I'm gonna start doing that sigil. So I'm gonna do a line across. I'm just kind of making almost like a line in the ink. I'm going to do a very simple love drawing one here, an open drawing. And again, you know, whatever you're working on, just keep dipping it back in the alcohol because you're making kind of an outline of where you're going to put this other secondary ink color to highlight your sigil. And again, this is just basic, basic, basic for you guys. So I kind of created that. Hopefully you can see it. Outline. Maybe I should turn this light off. Hang on. Is that better? Oh, it is better. Let's do it without the light. So now we have kind of like that basic outline, right? So now I'm going to take another Q-tip. What color do I want to use? I'm going to use red. So I'm going to shake up my red. We're going to dip it into our alcohol. I'm going to bring it to the side here and very carefully dab this red ink on there. And I'm going to start pulling that through. We're going to have to do that a few times because, again, this isn't glossy. This is matte. So unlike glazed, which is glossy, it's not going to spread as crazy and violently as it does on that surface. We're going to go through, we're going to get this red on there nice and good. Now, you can go as dark or as light as you want because I'm going to cover this one up. So once we have our sigil, right, basic, just for example purposes today, at this point, you might want to set an intent. You might want to set your petition. You might have a candle glowing. Maybe you want to drop a few, you know, little tiny drops of candle wax on here to seal that intent. Maybe you're going to ask for spiritual ally support. You're going to do whatever is part of your practice here. While it dries, you're going to kind of focus on that. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is, this is for me, you can do whatever you want, is I'm going to put some more elements on here so my sigil isn't quite so obvious. So I'm going to get some more cotton balls. I'm going to dip those in here. And I'm going to do some greens for prosperity. Prosperity and love, you know, prosperity isn't always money. Sometimes it's just having good other things too. And so I'm going to use some greens, a couple dots there. I'm going to use two different greens. And then I am going to use some gold just because I love glitter gold. This is glittery. Okay, and then again, kind of dab it off to the side because those first ones are kind of powerful. And then do your design. For me, I'm going to go right over it because I like concealment spells. It's there, it's active. There is some concealment there, and we are layering this nice gold green on top of that love drawing pink silver. Very, very simple, right? You can still kind of see the shadow of it there, but it's not as obvious. And you can go to town here. Like I said, like there's limitless possibilities. Now, when you're working with matte, obviously it's going to be a little bit harder to do, you know, very intricate designs. Like if you wanted to do like a cardinal or you wanted to do another symbol that represents your home or whatever you're setting an intent for, it's going to be a little bit harder to do that on an unglazed surface, but it's definitely can be done. I would use paint brushes, you know, go ahead and get those nice and wet in the alcohol, dab them off. And then I put my colors right on my paint brushes. So let's say I want to go back to magenta. I'm going to put some magenta right here. Oops. And be careful because that happens a lot. Maybe I just want to give it a little bit of a rosier corner here. And you're going to have to go over a couple of times, 2-3 times. But you can kind of see even with that first layer, the melding of the colors there. But this is just an example. You can do whatever design you want. If you want to do more intricate designs, I do recommend using a Sharpie. You know, let it dry. I'm not letting mine dry because I just wanted to do this quick kind of show and tell. But say, for example, I wanted to put we'll use cardinal on here. I might go ahead, I'm going to do an outline of my cardinal. My cardinal tail here. So I have this nice outline on there with my Sharpie. I don't know if you guys can see that a little bit. And then I'll probably go through that. It'll take multiple goes. I like using these Q-tips. They're the sharp Q-tips. Take out my red. And I might start just coloring it in very slowly at the lines first. Once you get those lines nice and good, then you can go in and start filling in the inside. You're going to have to like reapply. Again, it's not glazed, so you're going to use more ink. You're going to use less ink if it's glazed for sure. You're going to go in, you're going to start filling it in like so. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of give you an example, just kind of show you some starter tricks on working with these and how to implement them. Let me go ahead and switch my camera back. All right, welcome back. So that was just kind of a quick demo to show you how easy it is to work with alcohol inks with basic, you know, cotton swabs, cotton balls, and unglazed tiles to kind of set intents in your home environment or for your altar or for coasters when you're going to have company, if you're having a party, maybe have a bunch of protective type coasters. So yeah, so I thought it was a neat little thing to share this month. I would love your feedback. I think next month we are going to dive into some more spiritual arts. So if you guys have anything that you're interested in learning or doing, shoot me a private message or an email and I will definitely check it out. But other than that, stay magical and happy Valentine's Day.